We often talk about HBCUs and their importance in this country. We've also seen where some have fallen on hard times. Some have closed their doors. There is a fight in North Carolina to ensure that does not happen to one institution that's been struggling to regain their accreditation for a number of years. Barber-Scotia College has been under a microscope since it lost its accreditation in 2004. The school has lost its tax exemption status and is battling with a Concord City Council, Concord, North Carolina, in terms of what to do with campus buildings that are in disrepair. Dr. Tracey Flemmings is the Barber-Scotia College's interim president. She joins me from Florida. Roberta Pinckney is the Barber-Scotia College Board of Trustees chair in South Carolina. Glad to have both of them here. So let me first start with you, Roberta. Can you hear me?
I can hear
Okay,
you.
all right. We're still trying to get Roberta's audio fixed, so I'll start with Tracey. So can you hear me?
Yes, indeed.
All right, cool.
Thank you for having us.
All right. So you're going on. You're in your 19th year not having accreditation. Morris Brown is a perfect example. They went through a long period of time where they were able to regain their accreditation. And so what is the status of that? And first of all, is the school still operational? How many students do you have? How many faculty do you have?
Yes, thank you. In 2004, we lost our accreditation. And of course, in 2016, we got as close as we had been in quite a while in reobtaining that accreditation through TRAX. We decided to pursue TRAX versus SACS for just various reasons, and we feel like we were better positioned and suited to pursue TRAX. We are eligible to reapply for our accreditation through TRAX, and we've got an accreditation team that's been working diligently in that process. We attended our orientation back in October to let the TRAX committee know that we're serious about obtaining our accreditation back. We are down to 4 students, and those 4 students will be graduating in June. So we have a push to try to bring and recruit additional students. Back in August, we tried to bring students to the campus, and in doing so, our City of Concord partners, liaisons, halted that process. So our goal is, if we can't bring students to the campus and educate, then how can we survive and how can we continue to be a viable institution, which is what we're not understanding why our city consultants won't work with us there in the city of Concord, North Carolina. We've come a long way. The chairwoman and I have been in the seat now in interim positions, or I'm in interim. She's permanent for a year and 3 months, and we had asked, for people to be patient with us, let us get in, stabilize the school, and continue to move forward from there. So that's where we currently are. Okay,
so you say they won't work with you. Now, the accreditation is one thing, and so let's deal with your tax-exempt status. You lost that.
Well, we are being told that we have to justify not having students on our properties, and the properties being utilized wholly and holistically for educational purposes. And they're looking for 2023 to start taxing us on those properties that have been untaxed for over 100+ years. We do utilize the properties for educational purposes. As we all know, institutions like Strayer, Phoenix University, they started with no students on the campus. So having students on or off your campus does not necessarily justify your tax-exempt status as a 501c3 nonprofit institution. Also, we are continually trying to bring students to the campus, but we can't do that if city codes aren't going to approve our buildings and things of that sort, and working with us to help us achieve that goal.
Okay, so you're trying to gain your accreditation. First of all, you're going through that process. Now, when it comes to the tax-exempt status, okay, are you reapplying for that? Is that in review? And who is that? Who do you get that from? Is that the IRS? Is that the state? Is that the city?
What we've received thus far is from the I'm sorry, Chairwoman.
Well, I think what's happening here, we need to understand, we're actually talking about property tax exemption, not our 501c3 charitable tax exemption. That's intact. There's no problem there at all. It's the property tax exemption that's being the issue with the county tax office. Our
Okay.
buildings and our properties.
Okay. All right. So, okay. So, but again, whose decision is that? Is that the city or the state? And is there an appeals process?
To our understanding, it's the county. There is an appeals process. We have submitted an appeal, and it now goes before the equalization board with the county. So we have submitted all information. They will give us a review date and determine at that point what our status would be. Part of that county review board is represented by the county tax assessor.
Okay. All right. So, so now, what are you looking for from the public? Because, and again, there are people who are watching who are saying you got 4 students and they're graduating. What are you having next year? What do you have an actual growing concern? And then the other question is, who owns the land? And so what is the city trying to take it over, trying to sell it? Okay, what's going on?
Well, as the board of trustees for the college, we own all properties. We have approximately 19 parcels of property, 17 buildings. Barber-Scotia College Board of Trustees own the property. And so therefore, we are the one that's being taxed by the county assessor. So we have full ownership of the property. Again, because of COVID and other instances, we've like Morris Brown, we've lost our accreditation over 20 years ago. So we, as new leadership, we are inspired to, seek accreditation, seek financial stability, which is the big issue for us. We need funds to build the infrastructure of Barber-Scotia College.
So here's a question. But what is there to support? You have 4 students. If people in the audience are saying, hey, they want to support HBCUs, they likely are saying they're going to support something that is sustainable. And so how do you make the argument that you're actually a viable, growing concern when you literally have only 4 students? And you lost accreditation in 2004. This is 19 years later. And you're going through this. So, and again, what's the assessment? Buildings in disrepair. What is it going to cost to bring the buildings up to code where they're able to be used?
Well, first and foremost, that's a great question. What we're trying to do is continue to recruit. It is no secret that students thrive at places where it looks like them. I am a graduate of Barber-Scotia College. The chairwoman is a graduate of Barber-Scotia College. My parents sent 4 of my 8 to 10 siblings there, and we know what it does for us long term. Kids of today, they're not thriving at PWIs. They're going to thrive at a historical Black college institution. All of our buildings are not in disrepair, as you saw. We do have buildings that are viable that we do utilize today.
Okay, so how many? So you have 19 buildings, right?
Yes, sir.
How many are in disrepair?
We have 4 buildings that are in disrepair.
What is going to be the cost to bring those up to standard?
Estimate we've gotten is about $30 million.
Okay, so again, I just need somebody to explain this. It's going to cost $30 million to bring them up to standard. You got 4 students. Who's going to give $30 million to fix buildings when you got 4 students, when right now, literally, people are going to school without buildings. So what exactly are we trying to save?
First and foremost, our legacy. And our Board of Trustees worked very diligently with what this campus is and need to look like. We don't need all of these buildings, first and foremost, just like you said. Online has changed the whole scope of everything. So we're not looking to rehab every last one of these buildings, first and foremost. Secondly, we've incorporated some certification programs. When you're asking, what's in it for a student? Loss of accreditation only means that, we've lost that financial arm. Degrees are still degrees as long as there's a state of North Carolina.
But you can't. But when you lose accreditation, students can't receive federal financial aid.
That's correct.
And we know that 90% of HBCUs are dependent on the financial aid of students.
That's correct.
And how much is tuition on an annual basis to the university?
We have $1,500 to our students. We're looking for commuter students so that we can help offset our expenses from living and providing meals and things of that sort. So we can start with our commuter community, and that's what we're trying to do.
So I'm going back to, because, and again, follow me here, because look, I ran the Chicago Defender, and the paper lost money for 20 straight years. And we were in a building, and people were like, we got to save the building. To fix the building would have cost $10 million. The entire company wasn't worth $10 million. So, Roberta, I have to ask this question. If you're going to raise $30 million, if you need $30 million to fix buildings, does it make sense to raise buildings and try to use the $30 million for other purposes, but versus trying to save the building? I mean, I'm just trying to get at what are we actually trying to save? So when I was in Chicago, what I said to the people were, I said, do y'all want to save the building or do y'all want to save the paper? Because the paper can go on, not in this building, and that's exactly what happened. And so what is it that you're trying to preserve and rebuild? Because, again, as people are listening to this right now going, you got 4 students. What is being rebuilt?
Correct. Well, I mean, I hear your concern, and I understand it exactly. Because again, I mean, that's the reality of the situation. I can only tell you, Roland, that, we feel that, and I say we, Board of Trustees and the alumni, we have an opportunity to make Barber-Scotia anything it needs to be. It's a diamond in the rough right now. There are opportunities out there. Barber-Scotia is not going to be what it was when I was there in the 60s, but it can still be a viable institution that would, continue to educate and train the future generation and the workforce for tomorrow. We've talked with developers. We are interested in looking at our land value, looking at probably either selling land or leasing, ground leasing, those kinds of things. We're in those kinds of discussion. Yes, we have buildings, and we're not, I would say, basically tied to all of those buildings, but we do feel that we have, someone said that we are buildings rich and cash poor, and that's pretty much what it is. But we would like to be able to get an infusion of cash to help us with our daily operations, which would help us to build our infrastructure and continue to fundraise for scholarships for students that we do.
But I again, and I'm not trying to sound pessimistic, but I have to ask it.
Yes.
What is someone's cash infusion going to? I mean, that's, again, here's the deal. You're in North Carolina where there are more HBCUs than anywhere else. And if somebody has $1 million, okay, let's say there's somebody sitting out there and they say, I got $1 million. If they're deciding where I'm going to send my $1 million to, they're sitting here looking at St. Augustine's, they're looking at Winston-Salem, they're looking at your private and your public institutions. And so the gale force winds you're sort of walking into are difficult. So what exactly would they be investing in, and what is that plan? So for graduating, okay, what's your target next year? Do you plan to have 100 students? What is what are you looking? What does this roadmap look like that somebody would be investing in?
Okay.
Correct.
Dr. Flemmings, you want to respond?
Well, as far as the recruitment path, we're looking to try to build to 25 students and then continue to evolve from there. Just pre-COVID, we were up to 64 students. Our goal is to continue to get back to that platform through some of our certification programs, through people believing in what we're trying to accomplish through our business entrepreneurship program, through our religion program, through our solar and renewable energy programs. That's why we're partnering from a certification standpoint to get those programs going, let their students become the pipeline for our recruitment portals so that we can continue to increase that enrollment process.
Board Chair Roberta, go ahead.
Yes. Well, and some folks talk about nostalgia and all of that, but I think we feel as Board of Trustees that we have to protect our assets and use our assets wisely. And we feel that if there are folks out there could see the value in resurrecting this small HBCU that once put out folks like Mary McLeod Bethune and others, to me, it's a travesty to have this school to close. So I tend to look at it from the standpoint of hoping that there are, I guess, history-minded folks out there that could see the diamond in the rough and invest in making Barber-Scotia become all it can be. That may sound like a pie in the sky, but that's what I believe, and that's what the alumni we believe. 2 years ago, we were $12 million in debt. We were blessed to have that debt forgiven. Our total debt right now is under $2 million, but we don't have the student population to act as a revenue source for us. Right now, it's the alumni that's basically funding, our day-to-day operations. And because the buildings are open, some of our buildings are open, we still have expenses.
Okay.
So, again, it's our goal to hope that there are other folks out there that would want to see this HBCU revive and thriving.
All right. Well, certainly keep us abreast of what happens in terms of in the future. Thanks so much. So, welcome back, my panelists. Go to them. I'm gonna start with you, Michael. I understand supporting guys. Kill the music. I understand supporting HBCUs. I understand saving HBCUs. But this is, I'm still trying to understand, though, if someone is going to give a cash infusion, they're giving to, there has to be a there.
Yeah. Roland, let me start out by saying this. First off, my heart goes out to these two sisters, Roberta Pinckney and Dr. Tracey Flemmings. And I really feel that what we are seeing is the essence of Black women not wanting to give up on Black people. And that's why they're so committed. Okay. So my heart goes out to them. But as somebody with a degree in business, we got to deal with the reality of the finances. And if you're trying to raise $30 million and you have 4 students, and they have, according to this article here I'm looking at from WSOC TV, 9 students enrolled online. To me, I would ask the question, have you thought about going 100% online? Because you got more students online than, I guess, traditionally enrolled, one, and you can save a lot of money. Maybe you can sell off some of those buildings and go 100% online and buy one building and operate out of there. And 2, have you looked at, because you have such a great legacy, have you looked at trying to merge with other HBCUs, merge with other colleges to salvage your legacy and continue in a different form? Just because something, an institution or business has existed for 100 years does not mean it's going to continue in that same format. Things transform, things change, things evolve. So, brother, we have to understand how to become innovative. And the analogy that you gave with the Chicago Defender is an excellent analogy, you know, and I kind of understand somewhat something like that, because when I used to manage a Radio Shack, you know, they owned the building, okay, in Fort Worth, Texas, and they got to the point where they had to sell the building to bring in revenue and rent space out of the building that they used to own to be able to survive longer. So things like this happen in business, but we have to be able to disassociate emotions and feelings and be able to make financial decisions.
It really is, it was hard having to ask those questions, Kelly. You're a graduate of Bowie State, and the reality is, private HBCUs have. I mean, we already know public HBCUs have troubles, but private HBCUs, you know, 10 times more trouble. And I do believe, and I'm telling you, that was, look, I had people who were protesting me in Chicago. There were people who were, how dare this dude come in from Texas and he's trying to sit here and move the Defender. And I said, y'all, we have lost money for 20 consecutive years. The Michigan Chronicle was funding the Tri-State Defender, the Pittsburgh Courier, and the Chicago Defender. It was. That's how the company was still in business. So I come in, we lose money my first year, we make a $100,000 profit my second year, we make a $400,000 profit my third year, and I left because, frankly, the black millionaire owners who bought it out of Detroit, they didn't know what the hell they were doing with a media company, and they told me they just wanted to remain a small community paper when I was trying to actually turn it into a national media company that was worth millions. But people were in Chicago where they were wedded to the building because they grew up on the building. And I have this same viewpoint when I hear people protesting school closures. People talk about the building, and I keep saying, y'all, it ain't the building. You can save the building, but then have nothing else. And so I still am just curious again. And look, Morris Brown is fought through all of that. Their alumni stayed with them. The problem that this college has, they've revoked that tax exemption on a property. And so now if you appeal and you lose, the question now is, what do you do? And to me, this is just me. And again, I'm not looking at all of the data, but I'll be saying, yes, let me sell it to a black developer or someone along those lines, take the proceeds from that, and yes, move the college elsewhere and still keep the college going. But I just think that for a lot of us, we're wedded to the history of the building, the land, and I get all of that, but at the end of the day, you still gotta survive.
It is twofold, right? I understand where these women are coming from, and I also understand where you're coming from, because you're very pragmatic, you're very practical, you're very linear thinking, which is necessary in business. And honestly, that is what education, higher education is. It is a business, right? And this business isn't failing, it has failed. So I understand your approach in not being attached to a building and trying to find ways to survive and thrive in other facets so that you can still be a business, right? On the other hand, I understand where these women are come from because it's not just a building, right? Yes, there's nostalgia tied to it, but at the end of the day, with the history of how Black people had to acquire land and keep land, specifically in the South, that is a feat. That was a miracle. And I understand these women trying to keep their miracle. What I heard in this interview wasn't just, a plea. I heard a lack of a story, and I heard a lot of desperation, and you can't have that in business, right? So, just as advice, I would advise them to have a storytelling brainstorm as to the rationale necessary to convince people to keep what they have, because it is heartbreaking for a school to fail. It is even more heartbreaking for an HBCU to fail because we know how hard and how long it took historically to get to that point. But at the end of the day, I did not hear what the impact of Barber-Scotia was to the community. I did not hear anything about the history of Barber-Scotia, save for a name plug of Mary McLeod Bethune. But we don't know anything about this college. And at the end of the day, what I heard was that you only have 4 students. That is the story that's being told, that you only have 4 students. What's not being told is the history and the impact of this university college within the community and why it actually needs to stay. So I encourage them to actually tell a story that entices investors to come to them, so they don't have to go to them. They recruit investors more than they recruit students, and they'll get the money.
Let me just say this here, Matt, and again, and I have always been supportive of HBCUs, and we've seen other HBCUs close their doors. And I would say this, and again, look, folks reached out to me. I got emails from people, and they're like, "Hey, the city is trying to take this land from the school," and absolutely, I'm all about how do we protect land, but not just how do we protect it. The reality is this here: if let's say I had 50 acres in my family, and I just simply could not keep paying the taxes on that. Well, one thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to go find somebody Black to sell the land to. That's what I'm gonna do. I want to keep it in the family, but if I've exhausted everything, then this is what I have to do. And what I'm looking at here is, and again, I totally understand people in terms of, again, buildings, property. Listen, Jack Yates High School, I'll be back April 28th, giving out my 2 scholarships. I remember when they were building a new building, I had alumni across the country, Roland, we got to fight for the building. I'm like, no, I'm not fighting for that building. They were like, they tearing it down. I was like, yeah, they should tear it down. I said, listen, I know you went there and you would love to go back and walk the halls when you walked there. I said, but the building was built for 4,000 students. They don't even have 1,000. I said, they got asbestos. They can't even use high-speed internet in the building because the building is too old. I said, you're fighting for a building when Roland is trying to fight to save the school. And when I say save the school, guess what? The building may be different ones. The Chicago Defender original location ain't the one it's in now. The New York Times original location is not the one they actually are in now, but the New York Times still exists. And so for me, again, I get buildings, I get land, but I want our institutions to continue to survive, and our institutions may not survive looking like they look now, but if the institution is still there serving the needs of students in a different capacity, then that's what we're actually fighting for. Your thoughts?
I don't disagree, Roland. My thoughts are really kind of an amalgam of everyone's thoughts in this respect, insofar as, look, I walked the hallowed halls of Howard, and I was blessed to get my degree there, and I understand I would fight for Douglas Hall and, Children's Hall, or now I guess the Chadwick Boseman Fine Arts, School of Fine Arts. Well, look, here's the reality. A couple things. First, the story that's not being told is how 19 years have gone by where there hasn't been some kind of remedial action. And I think that's important. I don't know if Barber-Scotia was never able to get up on its feet and never able to entice those students to come back. But I think that's one of the things that would disincentivize investment, because people will say you got 2 decades and clearly there has not been an improvement. But beyond that, the thing that I think Michael hit the nail on the head is, as it relates to innovation, one of the things I read about this university or this college is that it's very closely affiliated to the Presbyterian Church. So obviously you get tax abatements if you are affiliated with the church and have religious services. So my question is, what other realms have they explored, to use your term, exhaustion? I mean, if they're tied to the Presbyterian Church, it stands to reason there could be religious services on campus which would absolve them of that tax debt. Beyond that, there also seems like if you've got 19 buildings, then perhaps they could be put in trust and they could be lent out to other institutions or otherwise house other things beyond Barber-Scotia students and have, a profit turned or have some benefit. So, it seems like, unfortunately, the university may be at the point of unsustainability, but I would be interested in, have they truly exhausted all of the possibilities? But the caveat to all of that is this. If you notice a lot of the story about this college, they have also been done poorly by the city of Concord. In fact, it's my understanding that the city had a partnership with them to fix a number of these buildings, did not try to collect on its bill for 7 or 8 years, and then tried to hit them with a note that was due in 30 days. So some of this may be racism. Some of it may be institutional oppression. Some of it may be poor relations between the college and the local city. Yep. But the larger story is, to your point, when you have 4 students, it makes it very difficult to incite people investing at all, let alone a substantial sum like $30 million.
Indeed.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment.
We feel the hidden impacts of climate change that land harder in Black, Brown, and Native communities.
Not many people talk about it because they clearly don't know our lives. But with President Biden's landmark infrastructure and climate plans, our issues are finally seen.
Removing lead pipes means we know our water is safe. Cutting carbon pollution helps our kids breathe easier. 1.5 million new jobs means stable work in communities. The impact we need
right now.